The Moon, Bound Garden, Section 1. The whispering sky in the quiet cradle of the ancient world, before the names of stars were ever spoken aloud, there lay a silver, green valley called Selethe. Gentle winds swirled there, as if the sky itself whispered lullabies to the sleeping earth. Birds with opal-tinted feathers glided silently above, casting no shadow. It was a place where time moved slowly, like honey dripping from a tree limb, and dreams often wandered free under the light of twin moons. The valley was tended by a goddess known as Elira, the dreamkeeper. She was neither tall nor small, but always bathed in a shimmer like morning dew. Her voice was soft, never louder than the breeze through willow branches, and wherever she walked, petals unfurled and sleep bloomed. Her garden stretched for miles, filled with flowers that opened only under starlight and trees whose leaves glowed with soft, nocturnal light. Each night, Elira wandered barefoot through her garden, humming songs older than the mountains. She gathered dreams in crystal flasks, dreams that drifted like silver smoke from the blossoms. These dreams, it was said, would one day be gifted to the mortal world, carried on moonbeams to sleeping hearts. The world outside Selethe knew nothing of this sacred place. Mortals hurried beneath the sky, their days filled with fire and their nights with restlessness. But in Selethe, the stars breathed slowly, and every evening was an embrace of gentle stillness. Tonight, as the twin moons rose, the elder, Tethril, with a golden hue, and the younger, Vire, pale as pearl Elira, paused beside the fountain of silent water, where dreams gathered in their purest form. She touched its surface lightly, and the mirror, like pool, shimmered, revealing a face she had not seen in eons. A mortal, and so began the tale of the boy who wandered into the moon, bound garden. Section 2, The Boy with the Lark's Heart. The boy's name was Calum. He was born far from Selethe, in a village nestled between two sleeping hills, where the stars were barely visible behind the clouds of smoke and sorrow. He was different from the others, quiet, curious, and always staring at the sky as though listening for a forgotten melody. His grandmother told him he had the heart of a lark, always longing for skies no one else could see. At night, Calum dreamt of silver trees and glowing fruit, of rivers that hummed lullabies and flowers that sang. No one else spoke of such things. They teased him gently, calling him Sky. Sick, but Calum smiled and let them be. Deep down, he believed that somewhere beyond the mountains, the world his dreams knew existed. One evening, on the eve of his 16th year, Calum climbed the tallest hill and fell asleep beneath a lone alder tree. The moonlight pooled around him like a cradle, and as he drifted off, a gentle voice spoke not to his ears, but to his heart. "Come, dreamer," it whispered, "the garden stirs." And in his sleep, Calum rose. His body remained resting on the hill, peaceful and still, but his dream, self-goal, denied and feather, light stepped into the starlit mist. With each footfall, the earth beneath him changed, the grass turned silver. The air thickened with the scent of jasmine and old magic. He walked without fear toward the place his heart had always remembered. In the garden, Elira opened her eyes. Section 3. The gate of stillness at the edge of Selethe stood a gate made of woven moonlight and vines of forget. Mean not. It shimmered faintly, visible only to those who carried sleep in their souls. Elira waited beside it, her hands folded gently, her eyes soft with wonder. Calum stood before her, uncertain. "Are you real?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breeze. I am as real as silence, she answered, and as fleeting. You've crossed through dream to find this place. Not many do. He stepped closer, entranced by the glow of her hair, which fell like silken twilight down her back. I've seen this place since I was small, in dreams. You carry the lark's heart, Elira said, and the lark remembers what others forget. Long ago, before time thickened like honey, mortals and gods shared the same sky. Now only dreamers can find their way here. Why me? He asked. Because the garden is changing, she said, casting a glance at the quiet blossoms, and it remembers you. She reached out and touched his forehead. A warmth like moonlight on water spilled through him, and the gate opened with the gentlest of sighs. Beyond it, the garden stretched in drowsy splendor, lavender fields that shimmered under stars, trees shaped like sleeping dragons, and fountains that sang without sound. Calum stepped through, his bare feet sinking into the dream, soaked grass. Behind him the gate closed, vanishing into mist. His journey had begun. Section 4, The Orchard of Forgotten Songs. Elira guided Calum through the orchard, where fruit hung like lanterns from trees of silver and ivory. Each piece shimmered faintly, as if alive with memory. This is the orchard of forgotten songs, she said. Each fruit holds a lullaby lost to the waking world. Calum reached toward a low, hanging orb that pulsed gently with light. May I? Elira nodded. As he touched it, the fruit released a soft note, a tone that made his chest ache with longing and peace. It was a song he had never heard, yet somehow knew, the way one knows a mother's hum before speech or thought. This melody once belonged to a child in the north, Elira murmured. He sang to the moon when no one else would listen. What happened to him? He grew, she said simply, and the world taught him to forget. They walked on, passing trees that hummed gently with sleeping tunes. Calum listened, awestruck. In every note was a world, a memory, a comfort. The garden, he realized, was alive with the echoes of all who had ever dreamt. Why are these songs here? He asked. Elira's eyes turned distant. Because dreams are not truly lost. They wait. They reached a tree unlike the rest. It bore no fruit, but instead wept slow, silvery tears. Calum touched one. It was cool and soft like first snow. This tree, Elira whispered, remembers a song that was never sung, a dream never dreamt. Calum's chest tightened. He felt a strange pull, as though he belonged to that silence. Will it ever bloom? He asked. When the dreamer is ready, she said. Section 5, The river that carries names. They came next to a river, not one that roared or rushed, but flowed slowly, gently, as if it too were half asleep. Its surface shimmered with light, and beneath its waters, names drifted like fallen petals. Calum knelt beside it. What is this place? The river Namayo, said Elira. It remembers every name ever whispered to the stars, even the ones forgotten by the world. He watched the water. As it moved, he saw letters form and dissolve ancient names, soft as lullabies. Do I have a name here? She smiled. You do, but it is not the one you use in the waking world. He dipped his fingers into the current. The water tingled like starlight on his skin, and a name rose, glowing faintly. Selion. That is what the garden calls you, Elira said. Selion, the listener. Calum Selion blinked. The name felt familiar, like a coat worn in another life. Why am I the listener? Because you hear what others sleep through. The rustle of old dreams, the hush of forgotten tales. This garden has waited long for someone to hear it again. Selion looked up at her. What happens now? She gazed across the river. You learn, you listen, you remember, and in time, the garden may ask something more of you. He nodded, his heart calm. The river sang on, soft and endless. Section 6. The sleep of the elder trees beyond the river lay a forest where the trees did not speak, but dreamt.
They were tall and ancient, with bark like weathered stone and canopies that shimmered faintly, as if sighing in their slumber.
Elira called them the elder trees. They are the oldest in the garden. She told Selion as they entered the hush of the woods. They remember the beginning of time, when stars were still children, and dreams were the first language. Selion walked quietly, his feet muffled by moss that pulsed gently beneath him like a heartbeat. The air was thick with quiet, not silence, but a deep and restful stillness that made his limbs soften, his thoughts slow. A tree nearby shifted faintly. Its trunk quivered, and a low hum pulsed from within it, vibrating the air like a tuning fork. "It's dreaming," Elira whispered. "Each elder tree holds a dream so vast, so old it takes centuries to finish." Selion approached one, resting his palm against the bark. At his touch, warmth bloomed. His breath caught as images fluttered through his mind, a sky of 2 suns, a woman made of stars, a city of towers that sang. None of it made full sense, but the emotion behind it did. Wonder, longing, peace. Can I learn their dreams? He asked. Only as they allow, Elira said. They do not speak in words. You must feel them like music. Selion closed his eyes and leaned against the tree. For a moment he was weightless. He drifted among stars, cradled in roots older than gods. He did not know how long he stayed that way, minutes or hours. But when he opened his eyes again, the elder tree pulsed once, as if in farewell. The forest had accepted him. Section 7, the windless garden. They came next to a clearing where not even the gentlest breeze stirred. The garden here was still, perfectly still, not from silence, but from listening. Every blade of grass seemed to be waiting. Every flower leaned forward, frozen mid-bloom. The air itself hung like a breath held too long. "This," said Elira softly, "is the windless garden. Here dwell the dreams not yet dreamt. They wait to be chosen, to be born." Selion moved slowly through it, feeling the weight of possibility all around him. Above, the sky seemed lower, heavy with starlight. Around him, small tendrils of mist drifted close, brushing his skin like a curious cat. "They are drawn to you," Elira said. "Why? Because you are awake, even in sleep. You carry both the forgetting and the remembering. That balance is rare." In the center of the clearing was a stone bench, pale as pearl. Selion sat, and the mists coiled gently around his legs, humming soft notes. They showed him glimpses of places he'd never seen, faces he'd never known. Each vision flickered and faded, like stars winking into being and then out again. "These are unborn dreams," Elira said. "They choose their dreamer, and sometimes they wait lifetimes to do so." Selion reached out, and one mist-laced dream curled around his hand. It felt warm like candlelight. He closed his eyes, and a single word bloomed in his chest: home. When he opened his eyes again, the dream had vanished into him. And somewhere in the garden, a flower began to bloom. Section 8, the pool of memoryless waters. Deeper still in the garden lay a hidden pool, its surface dark and quiet, like obsidian kissed by starlight. There was no reflection in it, no echo, just depth. Elira knelt by its edge, her fingers tracing the still water. "This is where memory dissolves," she said, "where some come to forget. Selion stood beside her, uncertain. Why would anyone want to forget? Not all memories are gentle, she replied. Some souls carry burdens too heavy for the waking world. Here they are offered rest. The water stirred faintly. Selion watched as pale lights danced beneath the surface, like fireflies drifting through shadow. Do they vanish? He asked. No, Elira said. They are transformed. Memory becomes mist. Mist becomes dream, and dream returns to the garden. He knelt and peered into the pool. The longer he looked, the more he felt the tug of sleep. The water called to him, not with danger, but with comfort. A promise of release. May I touch it? You may, she said, her eyes steady. But know this, even one drop can loosen the roots of memory. Selion nodded. Slowly, he dipped a finger into the water. For a breath, he felt himself dissolve his name, his shape, his past all became mist. Then, just as gently, it returned. When he pulled his hand back, the water clung to his skin like dew. You remember? Elira asked. I remember, he said, but softer now. She smiled. That was the way of the garden. Section 9. The night. Marked path as twilight deepened. Elira led Selion along a narrow path, marked by glowing stones. They pulsed gently beneath their feet, casting soft pools of blue light with every step. This is the night-marked path, she said. It winds through all corners of the garden, even those not yet known. Selion noticed that the stones shimmered faintly with patterns, star-like sigils, shifting slowly in rhythm with his heartbeat. Do they change for everyone? They mirror your dreams, she said. As you change, so do they. They walked in silence. Around them, the garden breathed slowly. Trees bent gently as if listening. Flowers opened, revealing eyes that blinked once, then closed again. Nothing here was asleep or awake, all was both. Where are we going? He asked. Toward the place between dreams. She said, the veil. The word filled the air with quiet gravity. Selion felt the hairs on his arms lift, not from fear, but from knowing he approached something sacred. You are becoming part of the garden, Elira said. It is remembering you as you remember it. Selion looked around. The stars above seemed closer now, as though he could reach up and stir them with his hand. Will I stay here? He asked. You are already here, she replied, and the path continued on, glowing gently beneath them. Section 10. The veil of soft unknowing. They came at last to a place where the stars grew thin, and the sky folded in on itself, a curtain of soft light not bright, but pale and quiet hung like woven moonlight across their path. This, Elira said, is the veil. Beyond it, Selion sensed not danger, but stillness deeper than sleep, a place where names ceased and stories had not yet begun. He felt no fear, only a reverent calm. What lies beyond? He asked. The unformed, the place between dreams and waking. Few walk there, and fewer return unchanged. She stepped closer to him. You may choose to pass through or remain. The garden will honor either. Selion touched the veil. It was cool, like morning mist. As his fingers pressed into it, he felt something shift inside him, a whisper of all he might yet be. I want to see, he said. Elira nodded once. Then you shall. And together they stepped into the light. Section 11. The shore of unwoven dreams on the other side of the veil. Selion found himself standing on the edge of a vast and gentle sea. The waters were not water at all, but shifting strands of light and thought, flowing like silk in a breeze. This was not a sea to be crossed, but to be understood. The horizon did not end, but folded into itself, like a lullaby with no final note. Elira stood beside him, her voice nearly a whisper. This is the shore of unwoven dreams. Here, dreams drift before they become themselves. They are formless, nameless, yet full of quiet intent. The sky here had no stars, only a pale and endless glow, as if dawn were caught in a sigh and suspended forever. Selion knelt by the shore and dipped his hand into the drifting strands. They curled around his fingers, humming softly. One thread pulsed warm and gold. It pulled at his memory, not with force, but familiarity. "It's waiting for you," Elira said. Some dreams choose their dreamer long before the dreamer is ready. Selion closed his eyes. The thread wound itself around his wrist like a bracelet, then vanished beneath his skin. In that moment, he remembered a song his grandmother used to hum when the rains fell too hard to sleep. He hadn't thought of it in years, and yet now it filled him completely, as if the dream had always held it, waiting. When you carry a dream, Elira said gently, it will shape your path, not control it, but color it, and the garden will listen more closely to your steps. Selion nodded. He did not fully understand, but the thread had nestled in his heart like a promise. The shore rustled, and the dreams drifted on. Section 12, the sleeping lanterns leaving the shore. They followed a winding trail through a grove of tall, narrow trees. Hanging from every branch were glowing lanterns of soft glass and starlight, their inner flames flickering gently with colors that changed like slow, breathing dreams. "These are the sleeping lanterns," said Elira. "Each holds a dream that was once cradled but never finished. Some fell asleep with their stories unfinished. Some woke too soon. Others were simply never meant to end." Selion walked among them, the soft glow bathing his face in lavender and pale gold. He could feel the quiet murmurs inside each lantern, fragments of dreams murmuring in their sleep. A snow-covered mountain, a ship made of petals, a child dancing alone in the rain. "Can they be awakened?" he asked. Elira nodded, but only by those who carry the thread. Selion's hand brushed one lantern that pulsed at his nearness. It flared gently, then dimmed as if recognizing something in him. "This one?" he asked. "Perhaps," said Elira, "but only if you choose to carry it forward." Selion cupped the lantern carefully. A warmth, soft and solemn, moved into his fingers and then into his chest. The dream curled into him, wordless and deep. "What did I just do?" he asked softly. "You remembered something that was never yours," Elira said, and gave it a place to rest. Selion exhaled, slow and calm. The lantern dimmed and faded, its dream now part of him. They walked on beneath the canopy of dreams that waited, some forever. Section 13, the hall of echoed names. The path widened and led to a colonnade of white stone pillars, each carved with names in thousands of tongues, none repeated. The air was cool and slow, moving, and the sound of wind through the columns was more than wind. It was the hush of voices repeating their names in song. "This is the hall of echoed names," Elira said. "Every soul who has passed through the garden is remembered here." Selion paused by a pillar that seemed to hum faintly when he neared. "Is my name here?" "Not yet," Elira said, "but it will be once you choose to remain or return." He touched the stone. The humming grew warmer, deeper. The column pulsed with energy that was not quite his, but familiar, like a twin heartbeat echoing from far away. "What happens to the names?" he asked. "They echo into the world," Elira said. "Whispers in the dreams of others. A name remembered by the garden never truly fades. Selion wandered through the hall, brushing his fingers along the ancient stone. Each name was a lullaby, a life once dreamed, a dream once lived. He did not feel alone here, though no others stood beside them. You carry their memory now, Alara said, as others may one day carry yours. Selion nodded, his breath deep and steady. The air here asked nothing, only gave. He did not look back as they stepped out of the hall. Section 14, the grove of gentle dusk. They emerged into a grove bathed in perpetual twilight. The trees here were soft and silver, blue, with bark like worn velvet and leaves that swayed in slow, circular patterns, as if dancing to music too quiet for sound. This is the grove of gentle dusk, Alara said. It is where the garden rests at the edge of forgetting. Selion felt his shoulders relax as they entered. Even his thoughts slowed, turning into quiet, floating things that didn't need answers. The world here did not expect, it simply was. Alara knelt beside a cluster of low blossoms that glowed with a dim, peach-hued light. She touched one, and a tiny sigh escaped it, like a sleeping breath. Many who visit the garden rest here before deciding, she said. Selion lay on the mossy ground, eyes half-lidded, deciding what, to stay or to return. He stared up at the sky, which was not dark or light, but something in between. A sky that didn't change because it didn't need to. What do most choose? He asked. Few come this far, Alara said, but among those who do, the choice is never wrong. The garden honors both. Selion's eyes closed. The moss beneath him cradled him like arms. The trees swayed above in rhythm with his breath, and for a while there was only the hush of dreams and the pulse of a heart that listened. Section 15, the return of light. When Selion awoke, the grove had changed. The trees were brighter, the sky tinged with gentle gold. Alara sat beside him, her hair braided with small white flowers that hadn't been there before. You've rested, she said. I dreamed, Selion replied, but it felt like the garden dreamed me. Alara smiled. That is its way. He sat up slowly. What happens now? Now, she said, you choose. You may remain here, become part of the garden's dreaming, or return, carrying what you've gathered. Selion looked around. The grove, the trees, the sky, they felt like home. But somewhere, far beyond the garden, he sensed the pulse of the waking world. The boy, beneath the alder tree, his village, his grandmother's voice. I think, he said slowly, the dream is not finished. Not yet. Alara nodded. Then you will return. But remember, this place is now part of you. Always. She touched his forehead, and light unfolded around them like a soft breeze. And Selion, the listener, closed his eyes. Section 16, the waking hill. Selion awoke beneath the alder tree, the sky above a pale blue canvas dusted with early morning cloud. Dew glistened on the grass, and birds chirped the same songs they always had. But something inside him had shifted, like the settling of a long, forgotten thought. He sat up slowly, placing a hand over his chest. The warmth of the dream thread still lingered, pulsing faintly beneath his skin. The world felt quieter now, not in absence, but in fullness. Even the wind in the trees hummed in rhythm with a song he couldn't quite recall. The village below stirred with morning sounds, doors creaking, footsteps in the dirt, the distant clatter of a bucket being filled. Life continued, unaware that a boy had walked the paths of a forgotten garden beyond dreams. Selion remained seated, watching the world with new eyes. The leaves seemed to glow, the air shimmered faintly.
and somewhere in the back of his mind he could hear the garden breathing.
He whispered, "I remember," and the wind replied softly, curling through the older leaves like a sigh of contentment. He would return to his days. But now, every step he took carried the weightless imprint of the garden. Every word he spoke, every moment he paused to listen, would weave threads of that other place into the waking world. He was Selion, the listener, and the world would dream again. Section 17, the morning thread in the weeks that followed. Selion wandered the village paths with quiet wonder. He no longer asked questions, nor tried to explain. He simply listened to the wind, to the spaces between footsteps, to the stories spoken in sleep by the firelight. He began to notice things others didn't. How the stars blinked in patterns like breath, how the river paused its song near certain stones, how old trees creaked not with age but with remembrance. Children were drawn to him. They sat beside him under the older tree, their eyes bright with the first sparks of dream. He told them gentle tales of lanterns that whispered, of rivers that remembered names, of a garden that bloomed under moonlight. The stories lulled them into soft sleep, their heads resting in the grass. Selion never told them the stories were true, but every so often one child would look up why, died and ask, "Have I been there too?" He would smile and nod. Perhaps the dream thread within him pulsed softly whenever he spoke, as though the garden approved, and each time a flower bloomed unseen beyond the veil. Section 18, the Dreamkeeper's return one twilight, as the moon began to rise and the air turned soft with dusk. Selion sat alone beneath the alder tree. The stars emerged one by one in slow reverence. He closed his eyes and let the stillness cradle him. A breeze stirred not a wind, but a presence. He opened his eyes. There, standing in the silver, shadowed clearing, was Elira. She looked unchanged, her hair still aglow with starlight, her eyes quiet with knowing. "You've been listening," she said. "I have," he replied. She approached slowly, each step soundless on the moss. "The garden hears you. Its dreams ripple out through your voice." He lowered his gaze. "I still miss it. You never left," she said, kneeling beside him. "You carry it with you. It grows through you." They sat in silence, watching as the sky deepened into violet. Above them, a shooting star traced a single arc across the firmament. "There will come a time," Elira said, "when others seek what you found, and you may guide them, like you guided me." She smiled faintly. "Yes and no. I showed you the gate. You opened it." Selion looked up at the moon. "Will I see the garden again, when the time is right?" Elira whispered. "And when your dreams are needed once more." And just like that, she faded into mist, her presence lingering in the hush of the night. The stars blinked brighter, and Selion, alone beneath the alder tree, closed his eyes and dreamed. Section 19, the dreaming flame in a small stone cottage near the edge of the village. Selion lit a single lantern each night. It was plain, made of wood and thin glass, but the light inside never flickered, even when the wind pressed against the windows. He called it the dreaming flame. Villagers began to visit. Some came in silence, others with quiet questions, few with heavy hearts. Selion never gave answers. He offered tea, warmth, and a place to sit. As they rested in his presence, something would shift, tensions softened. Old wounds quieted, and dreams stirred once more. They never spoke of the change, but many left his home with lighter steps. One evening, a woman with silver, streaked hair sat by the flame and asked, "Why does it glow like that?" Selion looked at the lantern, because it remembers. Remembers what? The way home. She nodded, as if she understood, and stayed the night in peaceful sleep for the first time in years. The next morning, a pale bloom unfurled in the garden behind Selion's house, one not seen in any other season, with petals like soft moonlight. Selion smiled. The garden was listening still. Section 20. The moon at the door one winter night, when the snow hushed every sound and the stars glittered like frost. Selion awoke to a knock on the door. He opened it to find no one there, but a small bundle rested on the threshold. Wrapped in a faded shawl was a child, no older than 4, fast asleep. A note pinned to the cloth read simply, "She dreams too brightly. I cannot help her." Selion knelt beside the child. She was warm, her breath soft and steady. As he touched her brow, a pulse of quiet dream. Song reached his fingers, clear and strong, like the ringing of a silver bell in the heart of the garden. "She remembers," he whispered. He took her in, wrapping her in a wool blanket, and set her by the dreaming flame. As it flickered beside her, she stirred and smiled in her sleep. From that night on, she stayed with him. He named her Mira, after the wandering star, and in time he came to see that she, too, was a dream. Listener, she would follow him into the woods, eyes wide with wonder. She would listen to the stories beneath stories, and when she sang, even the birds paused to hear. And somewhere, far beyond the veil, the garden bloomed brighter. Section 21, the threads between stars as the years passed. Mira grew under Selion's quiet care, not hurried by time but shaped by wonder. She had the soul of a wanderer and the heart of one who remembered before she ever forgot. At night, she would gaze up at the sky and speak to the stars as if they were old friends. One evening, as a meteor passed overhead, she asked, "Why do stars fall?" Selion, seated beside her under the alder tree, replied, "They don't fall, they return." "Return where? To the garden?" He said, "They are dreams that have finished their journey." Mira looked down at her hands. "Will I return too?" He smiled. "You never left." That night she dreamt of trees that glowed with memory, of soft rivers that spoke in lullabies, of her footsteps on a moonlit path lined with glowing stone. When she woke, she whispered, "I remember," though no one had ever told her what to forget. Selion knew then. The garden had planted a new thread, and Mira would one day follow it back to where all dreams begin. Section 22, the gathering fog as winter approached. A mist began to drift through the village. Not the chill mist of snowfall, but something older, slower, scented with jasmine and sleep. The elders noticed it first, waking with dreams too vivid to be explained. Children began to sleep deeper, longer, with smiles on their faces. Some feared it, but Selion knew the garden was reaching. He watched as the mist curled around rooftops and pooled gently beneath windowsills. It entered homes with the grace of a lullaby. People woke feeling lighter, as though their burdens had been shared in the night. One woman approached Selion and said, "I saw my mother last night. She braided my hair like she used to. She's been gone 20 years. Selion placed a gentle hand over her heart. "The garden remembers her." That evening, Mira asked, "Why is the garden calling them?" "Because they've begun to listen." The mist thickened, and through it, dreams began to bloom again. Section 23. When trees remember names one dawn, Mira wandered into the forest behind Selion's cottage. The trees here were old, gnarled, and quiet. standing like sentinels with roots deep in soil and memory. As she walked among them, she began to hear faint whispers names spoken so softly, they tickled the edge of thought. She paused beside a large birch and placed her palm on its bark. A name rose within her, not her own, but one that stirred her soul like music. Ilinari. "What is it?" Selion asked, having followed her at a distance. "The tree," she said. It spoke. He nodded slowly. They remember when spoken to kindly. Mira touched more trunks. Each time, a name came soft, old, aching to be remembered. She whispered them aloud, one by one, and the forest seemed to sigh. That night, she asked, "Are they part of the garden too?" Selion looked into the flames, everything that dreams is. And the trees, in their stillness, listened. Section 24, Lanterns in the Fog Soon. The mist in the village began to glow faintly after sunset. Not with fire, but with soft pulses of light, like breath made visible. People began placing small glass lanterns outside their homes, gestures of hope, of welcome, though they didn't know why. Mira called them the dreamlights. Each evening, she and Selion would walk the paths, lighting candles, tending to flickering flames. The air shimmered with quiet peace. People began to leave small tokens beside their lanterns' ribbons, written wishes, dried flowers. One boy left a single feather and whispered, "For my brother, who dreams far away." Selion watched silently, feeling the garden stir. "The veil is thin now," he said. "They're closer than they know." That night, the stars seemed to hum. Mira stood at the gate of their garden and said, "It's growing." Selion nodded, because they remember. Section 25. The return of the gate years had passed since Selion first walked through the gate of stillness. Yet one morning, as he woke to birdsong and golden mist, he felt a shift not outside, but within. The pulse of the dream, thread inside him, surged gently, like a quiet beckoning. He walked to the alder tree, Mira by his side, and there it stood, the gate, shimmering with moonlight and laced with vines, just as it had the first time. Only now, it stood not hidden in a dream, but visible in the waking world. Birds perched upon it without fear. The air around it was thick with memory. Mira gasped softly, "Can we go?" Selion placed a hand on the frame. It was warm, alive, not yet, he said, but soon. The gate pulsed once and faded, leaving behind only the soft scent of dream flowers. Selion turned to Mira. "When the world is ready, the garden will open again." And in his chest, the dream thread glowed brighter. Section 26, Mira's dream that night. Mira dreamed of moonlit fields and sleeping trees. She wandered through lavender that whispered stories, stepping lightly along the glowing stones of the night-marked path. The garden welcomed her like an old friend. Elera stood by the river Nemile, her hands folded. "You've grown," she said. Mira bowed. "I've remembered." Elera smiled. "The garden is listening again, and now it asks." Mira looked across the waters. She saw names drifting like petals. One glowed brighter than the rest hers. "What must I do?" she asked. "Walk as Selion once walked. Listen, gather, breathe, and when the time comes, open the gate for others." Mira's eyes shimmered. "I'm ready." Elera touched her brow. "Then let the dream carry you." Mira awoke with tears on her cheeks, not of sadness, but joy. The garden had called her by name, and she had answered. Section 27. The garden within Mira rose before dawn, her breath quiet in the hush of a sleeping world. She stepped barefoot into the frost-dusted grass, the stars still visible overhead. The dream thread within her pulsed softly in rhythm with the distant song of the garden. Selion met her outside. his cloak drawn tight against the chill. He did not ask what she had dreamed. He knew he had seen the same glow in Elira's eyes when he first walked the moon. "Bound path, she spoke to you?" he said. Mira nodded. "She asked me to listen." Selion placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then listen with your whole being, and when you feel the garden stir inside you, let it bloom." Together, they watched the sun rise, pale gold, spilling across the hills like a promise. Mira stood quietly, eyes closed, letting the warmth carry her forward. Within her, the garden grew not a place to visit, but to carry. Wherever she walked now, she would sow dreamlight with her footsteps. And so, the garden began to wander. Section 28, Petals in the World Mira, became known not for words, but for presence. Her silence held more kindness than most could say. She tended to the weary, listened to the lonely, and gently reminded those who had forgotten how to dream. Children followed her through the woods, drawn to her quiet laughter, and the strange wayflowers bloomed in her footprints. Adults sat in her presence, often in silence, and wept with relief. She brought no magic, no miracles, only memory. Of stillness, of warmth, of things once dreamed and nearly lost. One spring morning, a girl brought her a wilted blossom and whispered, "I dreamed of a tree with stars in its branches." Mira took the flower and smiled. "That tree remembers you." And the blossom unfurled in her palm, glowing softly. Section 29. Selion's last dream. Selion aged like moonlight on a slow stream, gently, quietly, with no resistance. His hair turned silver, his eyes soft with distance, as though always watching something just beyond the veil. He slept more often beneath the alder tree, where the wind still carried his name in quiet song. One night, under a blanket of stars, he called Mira to him. "The thread is nearly finished," he said. "It's time." Mira knelt beside him, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You'll see her again?" she asked. He nodded, and the others, all who walked the garden and never truly left. "What should I tell them when the gate returns?" He reached for her hand, his voice barely more than breath. "Tell them to listen, that the stars still speak, that dreams remember their names." And with a final exhale, soft and slow, Selion drifted. Above, the stars shimmered brighter. Below, the garden stirred, and somewhere across the veil, Elira welcomed him home. Section 30. The blooming gate seasons passed gently. Time moved not forward but inward. One dawn, as birds welcomed spring, Mira stood beneath the alder tree. A wind stirred, a wind not of weather, but of memory, and then the gate returned, brighter than before, blooming with vines of light and petals of midnight blue. It shimmered as if exhaling from a long dream. Mira touched it gently. "I remember." And the gate opened, not just for her, but for all who had ever dreamed. Through the village and far beyond, others felt it. A pull, a whisper, a path forming beneath their feet. A path back to the stillness they had once known. The garden welcomed them, one by one, without judgment, without haste. And Mira stood at the gate, the new listener, guiding each soul with a quiet smile. Section 31. The garden at rest. The moon. Bound garden no longer lay hidden in the folds of sleep. It moved through the world now, in laughter, in lullabies, in the hush of twilight and the pause between words. Flowers bloomed where comfort was given. Dreams returned where they were needed most. The garden became not a place, but a presence. And when night fell gently across the hills, and stars gathered in their soft rhythm. Mira sat beneath the alder tree with a new child resting against her shoulder.
"Tell me a story." The child whispered, and Mira spoke. Long ago, before the stars had names, there was a garden where dreams were born. Her voice flowed like moonlight on water.
Around them the petals sighed, the lanterns hummed, the trees leaned in to listen, and the world finally fell asleep.